Hi, Melanie Muenchinger here, illustrator for Gina K Designs. Today I'm going to be sharing another project with my fabulous frame set, and I wanted to kind of give you my vision for what I had in mind when I was designing this frame to go with my Stately Flowers series, also from Gina K Designs. This is a great way to showcase any flower, but the Stately Flowers series I just thought would be really nice for this since you have large scale flowers for that large oval in this set. Now, this particular flower is the coast rhododendron. It's the state flower of Washington and West Virginia. You might not be from that state or know anyone that lives in that state, but this is a really beautiful flower, and so I just wanted to show you a way that you could showcase this botanical with its name in a way that is kind of understated, and you also haven't committed to a greeting. So I just really like this design. For today's project, you'll be needing the fabulous frame set and the Stately Flowers 4. Cardstock, I've got the Gina K Pure Luxury White Baseweight, the Heavyweight for the base, and then some of the lovely lavender for this top layer. And the reason why I'm layering it onto white, we will be coloring in the borders with some alcohol markers, and it will bleed through this layering weight colored cardstock. You'll also need a scrap of white for stamping the floral image on. This was actually cut from the studio cut file that coordinates with the Stately 4 set. So if you don't have that cut file, you'll need some scissors and then just a scrap of white paper. Going to be using some black Onyx and wild lilac ink. Got some Post-it notes to, mask off those borders. I've got some small blocks for the butterfly from the fabulous frame and for the rhododendron. Just some little accents today. We're using some adhesive pearls, some of the Gina K white organdy, and then just some foam scraps to pop up that flower. I've got some adhesive, and then I've got several Spectrum Noir markers that I'm using today. I've got the HB1, HB2, and HB3, which are some beautiful lavender shades for that flower, accented with the PL4 for the centers. And then we're also using the CG3 and CG4 for the leaves. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. You'll also need a large block for that frame. So we set this aside, and we'll go ahead and stamp our frame. So just ink it up. Centered for you. Pardon my head if I get in the way. Press all over and pull it away. Okay, now what we're going to do, if you'll notice on this card, I didn't just stamp randomly the flowers all over the background. I've shown you something kind of similar to make a monochromatic card, but on this I kind of want to make a floral cascade around those borders. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to mask off the edges with some Post-it notes. And you can also use that mask that I've shown you before, but since I'm just doing the edges, and I don't mind if I go over that middle oval, I'm just trying to kind of create a cascading border with that flower around the edges. Okay. One up here, and then you can just pull them away, and they're still sticky, so you can reuse them when you need to. Also, you want to grab just a piece of scratch paper because the lilac ink is a little bit darker than I want for this particular project, so you're going to ink it up each time with this lilac, stamp it off, and then I'm going to go over that corner, ink it up again, stamp it off, and just go to the side, stamp it off. I'm going to come up here to the top, and I'm turning the stamp each time, but see how it's just making this really pretty cascade there around the edge. Stamp it off. Okay. So now it looks like you've got this beautiful embossed border. And I'm also going to take the butterfly from the Fabulous frame because I just wanted a little something down there in the corner. So I'm going to stamp that off as well, and then just put it right there on the edge. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and stamp the Coastal Rhododendron and the purple, but this time I'm not going to stamp it off. Let's have this pop out just a little bit more. So I'm just going to put it right in there. So I love knowing the names of things, so it's just kind of nice to go ahead and have the name of that flower on there. Someone might not necessarily know what it is otherwise, like they might be able to identify a rose or a sunflower. All right, now let's go ahead and fill in these borders. So I'm going to use this lightest HB1 around the edges, and it's just going to be a real subtle way to fill this in and tie in those flower colors. And I just find it easier to turn my cardstock as I go and keep my hand in the same place rather than having to go up and color the top. Okay. And a monochromatic is just always a great way to go for a really elegant look on a card. So it's just really soft, and if you want that to pop a little bit more, you might want to choose a deeper purple. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the HB3, and I'm going to fill in, let me use the chisel tip actually. So I'm going to go around these edges, and this actually looks a little bit more like the Gina K Wild Lilac cardstock if you have that. So go around that edge. And again, I just love being able to color in my borders rather than having to cut out all that cardstock, because it's just such a nice way to make sure that your layers are really going to match those colors that you select to color in your flowers or your other images. Okay, and then we'll color over this one. See, and I didn't mask that off inside of this belly band. I love how you can see that subtle bit of the flower popping through. All right, now let's go ahead and color this flower. So I'm going to start with the lightest color, this HB1. Okay, and I'm just going to fill in just the edges of those flowers. So this is really quick. And the lighter a color is, the more forgiving you can be with adding. But see, I'm leaving some white areas open. So where you see the most shading on these flowers is where you're going to have the most color, the darkest shades. And over here, just fill that in. And then we're going to take those darker purples and lavenders and periwinkle colors and go into those folds. Okay, so let's go ahead and use the HB2. So I'm just going to go in there, the centers. Let's go ahead and trace some of these little lines, these little frills and folds on the edges of the petals. And you can do this quickly or you can spend more time, but a lot of times the results are pretty much the same. So that's why I usually try to work quickly. Okay, put in just a little bit there. Trace around the edges. And then you can go back and blend that a little bit if you want with the paler color at the end. Okay. A little bit there. Okay, now let's take that HB3. Okay, this is darker. So go into that middle, just a few little spots. So you don't want to trace the exact same areas, just some little highlights, because then you would lose that in-between shade, the HB2. So there's just a couple little accent places. Okay, now let's go ahead and use the PL4. And this is what's going to really make those centers pop. So here, tiny bit in here. Okay. Now I'm going to go back a little bit with that HB3, that first color. And just pull some of those other shades that we've already added down into the flower and just blend them a little bit more. So even though this is a lot more fuchsia, sometimes you just need just a little bit of a different color to contrast to really make those other shades pop so that the monochromatic doesn't end up looking dull. Okay, now let's go ahead and do the leaves. So I'm going to add in this nice bright green and just leave a little bit of white. Color it all in though. Okay, do all the leaves. Now let's do the darker green. And I'm going to add this over my darkest areas, so underneath the flower and wherever you see those little contour lines, suggesting the shading, and then you can put it around the edge there. And then we can also do some tip-to-tip coloring, where we can pick up a little bit of the darker green onto that light green marker to blend it. But we don't want to blend out all the colors, so let's just go back in first with that lighter shade, and then maybe do just a little bit of tip to tip. Yeah, that's a lot greener. Okay, and then I'm just going to add this ribbon across the belly band. See, and that just brings out those little white bits in the flower. So we're going to wrap that around. We're going to put just a little bit of adhesive there, and then a little bit of adhesive here. I'm running out of my dots. And check the front to make sure that it's going through the middle. And then we'll put on just a little bit of adhesive on the back of this. And another fun look you can do sometime, and I'll show that sometime, but this might even be the way that you want to use it. But this is kind of a faux watercolor that you can use by coloring through a thinner cardstock. This is the layering weight, and so it's just really beautiful how your alcohol markers, whether you're using Copics or the Spectrum Noir, are going to come through and just give you a really watery, subtle look. So we're going to add that, take off all the paper. Just pop that right over. Then I took just a few of these little adhesive pearls and just thought it would be pretty to have them accent the edge of that frame. So just making a little curve, follow that around. And then I thought it would be fun just to add a larger one to that butterfly body. And then we'll just put the adhesive on the back here. And we are done, and that is a very fancy layered looking card. You almost have to just run your fingers over it to see that that is just 2 layers, with the 1 layer of the stamped card and then the flower. I hope you enjoyed this project and it gives you ideas for how you can use all the different stately flowers in the series and their names. Please visit my blog, Hands, Head, and Heart, for more inspiration. Thank you for watching today.